And the man does have kids and a family. There have been a lot of jokes on social media, a lot of memes about this guy who was not a good guy. I'm certainly willing to admit that. And we have a lot of problems with our healthcare system. My take is that we shouldn't be condoning or laughing at this murder that took place. To talk to us a little bit about this, because he's been more on the side of, the other side of it. Maybe he could explain himself a little better. His name is Professor Anthony Zankas. He's a professor over at Columbia and at Delphi. And I appreciate you, Professor, for joining us on the show today, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Sorry about the back and forth, but I'm glad it's finally working. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Hello, Las Vegas. I'm jealous of your weather. I would like to be there right now, but
yeah,
that's another story.
The weather here is pretty awesome. There's no question about that, Anthony. All right, so let me get this straight. Help me understand this. You've been more on this, and correct me if I'm wrong. You've been more on the side of defending the memes and maybe the jokes about this man's death. Tell me why, and tell me if I'm characterizing it correctly.
No, that's not correct. I haven't been defending memes. I've been commenting on the tenor of what's going on in response to the killing of Brian Thompson, and really using it as an opportunity to have the conversation about universal healthcare, which we need. And I mean, obviously, and I'm sure you've covered this, there's a lot of frustration across the political spectrum with these companies. And, United Healthcare being the worst, having an almost 1/3 denial rate. It's just, and so I saw it as an opportunity to have that conversation. And every day, and this isn't new for me, I've been posting since the research came out in 2020 or 2021 about the 68,000 Americans who die every year needlessly because of the for-profit system. So, the post, it's not a tweet anymore, the post that got like millions of views that I did on December 4th basically said, today we mourn the death of Brian Thompson, the CEO of, and then I I said, actually, today we mourn the deaths of the 68,000. And I just want to be real clear on something. Not everybody may agree with this. I'm very anti-violence. So I'm also anti-gun. I have my own views. I don't apologize for my views. And I think anytime anybody's shot, killed in any way, it's horrible. And when we center the death of one man, regardless of what he did in his life, over 68,000, and again, the mainstream media is not having the conversation. To me, that's a crime. And people are obsessing about it.
Yeah. So, Professor, I think everything you've said is very legitimate, and I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said. Obviously, I would hope that we would agree. Anybody who glorifies this guy, Luigi Maggioni, I think is sick, because Brian Thompson has kids and he doesn't have a family. However, one of the first things I said was, well, I don't condone this killing, and it's sounding to me like you don't condone it either, which I'm happy to hear. Brian Thompson was not a good guy. And I'm not afraid to talk about this on the air. He was under investigation by the DOJ for insider trading. And you're absolutely right. The business practices over there at United Healthcare, I am not here to defend that. Now, what I've said, and I think we'll agree on this, Anthony, what I've said is let's turn a negative into a positive. In a way, maybe something that you're doing as well. And that let's have this conversation. Let's talk about, I had a woman, who hit me up on social media the other day who said she lost her son to cancer. They had United Healthcare, and her son was not able to get the care that he needed to save his life. There are a lot of stories like that across the country, not just with United. So I'm with you on that. And I think we need to turn a negative into a positive. I just want to make sure that nobody is condoning, I'm not saying you are, but nobody is condoning this guy's death and saying that violence is the answer, and nobody is glorifying his death. I don't like the memes because this guy has kids. His kids haven't done anything wrong. But again, Brian Thompson, I don't think he was a very good guy, but we can't take matters into our own hands and start shooting people on the streets.
Agreed. And I just think it needs to be emphasized. Being the victim of a violent crime doesn't make one a saint. That doesn't mean violent crime is okay. The only issue I'm going to take it with you on this is you said we can't be. People are. there are many people. I mean, we're talking Facebook, which is not a bastion of like socialist radicalism,
Mhm.
where we're like moms and like older people were there wasn't there tens of thousands of laughing emojis
Yeah, I think that's
on
wrong.
the I, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I think it's wrong if we miss what's going on. Imagine that a death, and it's funny because this guy, I had never heard of him before. He wasn't a known. Some corporate heads like Jamie
Right.
Dimon, we know them. Lloyd
Yeah.
Blankfein, like we knew these. I'd never heard of Brian Thompson.
Mhm.
So somebody that people had never heard about, and they're going out of their way to put a laughing emoji on the memorial death announcement that United Healthcare. I think it's
Right.
a mistake to ignore the fact that so many people have so much deep-seated anger and hatred. And I'm not saying you disagree with this, but you and I can say that's in poor taste. And people who are good people are feeling this, right? And there are people that are condoning it. And I just want to talk real quickly about violence for 1 second
Sure.
because I think it's sad, but we are a violent society. Our
Mhm.
government, regardless, I understand people have differing views on Ukraine and on Israel, but from my perspective, we are always mired in some sort of battle or war
Mhm.
where often vulnerable people, many times, but not always, like brown people or black people in parts of the
Right.
world that are struggling, end up on the wrong guns that we either are holding or lately that we are applying. I've just witnessed carnage for 14 months straight in
Mhm.
Gaza. And to hear politicians come out and say, like, we don't resort to violence, you actually do. And I think one of the problems is when violence is the language spoken by the society, it will end up inevitably being the language used to transform. I don't want that to be the case, which is why I've been working. I occupy this end of this little, rant here. I've been since 2011 when I occupied Wall Street. I've been actively working for single payer nationally and in New York. There is a bill that's still sitting in committee. The Democrats run the state; they won't let it out of committee. Um, Same thing happened in California. Single payer shot down, completely run by Democrats. And I've been working through the system, and I will continue to do that. But if the system continues to ignore it, and people know everyone has a horror story or knows someone with a horror story about healthcare,
Sure.
you, I'm surprised this hasn't happened already. And
I know there's a lot of
you know,
issues with Obamacare, right? I understand there a lot of people have issues. What, 20 million people are on Obamacare, but a big issue I have with the Republicans is Donald Trump, that they keep complaining about Obamacare, but yet he has no
yeah,
replacement plan. He said it again the other day. I have concepts of a plan. That's my issue. The biggest issue with the Republican Party that I have, and I have many issues with the Republican Party, is that they'll bitch and complain about something and they have no solution to it, right? None, zero, no
none.
solutions with all the gun violence in this country. No solutions when it comes to our healthcare. I'm not saying the Democrats are perfect, Professor, but at least they have something in place. We can all say
I don't
there's a lot of
agree.
issues. Well,
No, I
then
don't
what?
agree.
You think Trump
I
has a
agree
replacement
with the
plan? Then there
first
is.
part.
Yeah.
I want to go on record. Yeah, the Republicans have zero solutions to any of the
Mhm.
problems that matter to us.
Right.
And I think this has been known for a while. It's comical when Trump says that. I have a concept like, come on, man, like you don't. And
Right.
he didn't, he's, by the way, if this issue mattered to Donald Trump, and I'm saying this, if I'm sure you have listeners across the spectrum, to those that voted for him, if he cared about your health care, he was in office for 4 years and out of office
Right.
for 4 years. He could have been working on it.
Of
He's
course.
not. He's not.
Right.
And so there's that. The problem is the Democrats have undermined every step of the way a push to expand to single payer. Now, there are some people who said, well, we can't do that so quickly. We should go to a public option first. Joe Biden ran on a public option, and once he got the nomination, never mentioned it once again. My problem with the Democrats is not that I don't believe there are Democrats, I do believe, that do care and want this to be. But the party itself as a whole and the leadership is firmly entrenched in corporate status quo. They will tweak the edges and say, like, listen, the ACA leaves 27 to 30 million Americans with no health care and another 50 million that are have inadequate care to the point that they can't afford to use it.
Okay, but can I just interject
my
real
problem
quick?
with the Democrats, you could do these things. They don't even try. And answer me this. Why did Joe Biden run on a public option and then not even mention it during the campaign and not since he's been in office?
There's no doubt
they're not going to change it.
That's a mistake. But I would also counter by saying, who is giving the biggest tax breaks to these large healthcare companies? It's not the Democrats. It's Donald Trump and the Republicans who have the biggest tax breaks.
You're telling me the Republicans are terrible. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I apologize.
I don't think every Republican is terrible. I think Donald Trump is a terrible person. But
I think a lot of Republicans. No, I don't mean as people. I don't care who's a good or a bad person. When it comes to the issues that matter to the working class, the Republican Party itself is terrible, and the Democrats allow it. And we had Bernie 2016, Medicare for all, energized a whole group of people. And it's a matter of it's a matter of historical record. They cheated and they colluded. I mean, that's why 4 DNC heads had to resign.
I would love to see Bernie Sanders be the president of the United States. I think it'd be wonderful.
But I believe you. And so would a lot of, listen, I knew Republicans that would have voted for him. And then the interesting thing was they're like, I don't agree with him on everything, but I believe he's authentic and he's not full of, garbage. But here's the thing. You are a Democrat and a voter that I'm assuming votes Democrat consistently.
Lean to the left, independent. I did not vote for Barack Obama. I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm extremely anti-Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, he's who he is. There's nothing new there. The problem is the Democratic establishment is not for universal health care. The Democrats who run California had a single payer bill, because one of the things we looked at was, and this is an important piece, I just want to get this out. If the federal government is not going to address universal care, which the ACA is not universal, right? It's better than what existed before, but it's not universal. If the federal government will do it state by state, Democrats run California, 2 branches of government. I mean, the 2 houses of their state legislature, as well as the governor's mansion, right? They own that. The bill sat in committee. Newsom ran on the single payer bill in California, and then UHC, United Healthcare, dumped a shit ton of money gave it to Newsom. Yeah, he got over $100,000 from them, I think. And then into a whole bunch of other legislators. They never talked about it, never let it out of committee. The same thing happened in New York. Every chance we have for transformational legislation, the establishment Democrats do everything they can to stop it by undermining a candidacy like they did with Bernie in 2016 or 2020, or giving so much money to a state that nothing changes. Meanwhile, listen, if this was just like, something we disagreed on but didn't have these consequences, that's one thing. You talk about 680,000 people dead in 10 years, not counting that research shows a third of all COVID deaths were due to the private insurance industry. That's over 1 million people. And my thing, I just want to talk about it. And whoever's going to listen, I'm going to listen. And my posts are meant to get engagement going and conversation going, and that's how I do it. People got pissed off, but
I think you have good intentions. It's why I wanted to invite you on. I wanted you to be able to clarify the death of Brian Thompson, which you have, and I'm happy to hear that we both agree that we should never condone violence. I'm not a big gun guy either, by the way. And that's why I wanted you on, because I do think you have good intentions, as I do. We all want everyone in this country to be, at least I do and you do, to be able to have affordable health care. And regardless of pre-existing conditions, people have a right to live their life and be happy and get the help that they need, medically speaking. I'm with you 150%. And it's an important conversation to have. And that's why I say, if Brian Thompson's murder can be used, without defending it, to start this conversation up again and get people talking about it, and maybe his death can save lives long term, then maybe that's a good thing, where we can turn a negative into a positive, right? We only got about 2 minutes left. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, I think you're that we have an opportunity right now. And I'm also concerned about those that are doing a celebritizing. It's not a word, but just made it one. The suspect or person, if it was a suspect, he's been charged. I'm not even gonna, like, we don't need more celebrities. We need conversations on the 68,000 that die every year. We need conversations on the millions that have been thrown into financial ruin the past 10 years because of this system.
Uh-oh, I think we just lost you. Professor, I appreciate you coming on. It appears as though we lost, the connection was a little faulty there, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us, Professor. Thank you for jumping on with us. And I'm glad that, because you, like you said, some of your tweets had millions and millions of views and tons of comments, and some people were going after you. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to come on the show and clarify, which you have. If you're just joining us, his name is Professor Anthony Zankis, who just joined us on the show. Professor at Columbia and Adelphi. Some of his tweets got millions and millions of views because some thought, based on his statements, that he was in some way condoning the murder of Brian Thompson. He's very passionate when it comes to healthcare. He was able to clarify, and I'm glad I gave him the opportunity to do so, because I think his positions are actually very reasonable if you actually take the opportunity to listen to him, which is what I did on this show today. We cannot, and I say we, anybody, you shouldn't be condoning what Luigi Maggioni did,